the Radio Forest Podcast.
Hey there.
Hey, Warren, how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. When we talked for the blues album from Mule, I forgot to ask you, I saw a video of Dave Grohl telling a story about 9/11 that involved you and his mom.
Yes, that's a really crazy story.
So basically what had happened, Dave Grohl's house is pretty close to the Pentagon. 9/11 was happening. He's trying to get her out of the city, and then that's where you come in?
Yeah, I was in New York City, and I had a show a few days later in Denver. All the flights were canceled, and the airports weren't going to reopen anytime soon. So we started looking for a tour bus to get me to Denver, but apparently we thought of that too late, and there were none available. We finally found a tour bus in North Carolina that could pick me up if I could get to Allentown, Pennsylvania, which I did. And then they called me back and said, look, you can say no, but Dave Grohl's mom is looking for a ride to California. Do you mind if she tags along? And I was like, no, Dave and I are friends. I'd be happy to do that. And so myself and my tour manager and Dave's mom, Virginia, who just passed recently, shared a tour bus for 36 hours and got to know each other very well in a short period of time. Of course, it was a bonding moment. It was right after 9/11, and everybody was in this weird, somber headspace. But she was a beautiful person.
What was it like being in New York during 9/11? I was in Pennsylvania, so I was close-ish, but not New York itself. How close were you, and how did you hear about it happening?
Well, my apartment at that time period had a view of the Trade Center. And my wife and my neighbor woke me up to tell me that the first plane had hit, and we watched everything after that from our balcony. And it was extremely bizarre. My apartment was in what became quarantine zone, where you had to show ID to get in and out. There were no cars on the street. It looked like a war zone. It was surreal, the most surreal thing in my life, possibly.
I assume that you and Grohl have a lot of similarities, and you said you'd known him for a while, and you guys are pretty good friends. He had just the nicest things to say about you, saying how nice of a man. He said you were the sweetest man in the world. But you both love to record analog. You both tour like crazy. You both are always working on music, and you both have covered Pink Floyd's Have a Cigar.
Yeah, and there's probably other common ground as well. But, yeah, Dave and I met years ago at RFK Stadium at one of the Tibetan Freedom concerts and have been friends since. And, of course, he came for the 30th anniversary of my Christmas jam that I do in Asheville, North Carolina, my charity event. He was there for that, and then COVID happened after that, and we shut down for a few years, but now we're back and running. I think, he's such a talented guy overall. I mean, aside from being a singer, guitar player, songwriter, his drumming is fantastic.
Mule's got a new album, Peace Like a River. The song, Dreaming Out Loud, that is amazing. You've got multiple singers. There's horns. There's a sense of, funk. It kind of reminds me of Sly and the Family Stone.
That's kind of what I was feeling when I decided to have multiple singers, because that was the thing that I loved about Sly is one person would sing this verse and another person would sing that verse and then another person would sing the chorus. So we went for that kind of approach. Ivan Neville and Ruthie Foster and myself trading vocals back and forth. And it really turned out great. As you mentioned, there's a horn section. Our friend Bobby Allende is playing percussion. So it's a larger ensemble than the normal Mule, but it fit the program.
Now, this is a left turn from the last Gov't Mule album in a good way. So are there more songs similar to Dreaming Out Loud? Do you have more guest musicians? Are there other instruments that you don't usually cycle through that make an appearance on this record?
Well, there's one song that I would say, one or two songs that are similar to Dreaming Out Loud as far as there being some sort of soul music influence. But most of the record is very much a rock and roll record. There is a tune that our friend Billy Bob Thornton joined us on that Danny Lewis, our keyboard player who also plays a lot of guitar, he played trombone and trumpet on that tune as well. So there's some cool instrumentation on that song. But, this record covers a lot of ground. It showcases a lot of our influences. And song for song, I think, may be my favorite one yet.
I forgot that Billy Bob had done music. Was he playing guitar? Is that what he did?
He sang. This is not a diss, if you call it that, because I asked him to do this kind of spoken word sort of thing. I'd never written a song before that I wanted the verses to be talked and the choruses to be sung. And so when we worked it up, I was doing that myself, but I didn't think my voice was the right voice for the kind of beat poetry. I wanted something more demented. So I called Billy and sent him the song, and he's like, yeah, I love it. Let's do it. So his voice just added the perfect element to it. So it's him in the verse and me in the chorus.
So you already were in contact with him, and he just randomly, you thought of that voice, or had you used him or played with him before?
We've done quite a few things before. He has a great studio in L.A., and he and I and my wife Stephanie have hung out there a lot late at night. And I've played with his band when they came to New York, and we actually wrote a song together recently. So we go way back at this point.
Your tribute to Skynyrd at the CMT Music Awards, that was phenomenal. It's you and Paul Rodgers and Slash and Billy Gibbons and Winona Judd, and I think you got the keyboardist from the Allmans in there. Now, did you...
Chuck LaVille, yeah.
Yeah, Chuck. Did you know Gary? I know you've seen them probably real early, at least in your life. Just give me kind of a brief overview of your connection to Lynyrd Skynyrd.
I knew Gary. We were friends. We toured together some, both with Gov't Mule, and the Allman Brothers and Skynyrd did a handful of shows together when I was in the band as well. I was a big fan of his guitar playing and songwriting. And I guess my history with Skynyrd, the first time I ever saw him, 1973, I was 13, and I went to see the Goose Creek Symphony opening up for Wet Willie, and Wet Willie canceled, and the promoter put Skynyrd on in their place, and nobody knew they were coming, and nobody really knew who they were. So people were not happy about it. But then, of course, they started playing, and people started relaxing and going, oh, this is pretty good. Then I saw them like a year later, or maybe that was 72. And then I saw them a year later, and they were getting bigger. And I saw them on a big festival bill, and they were gaining steam, And that's the only two times that I saw the original band. Then we played a lot together later on. But, that music's timeless music. It's going to be here forever.
Now, at the tribute, it's you, Slash, and Billy. Were you playing like specific guitar members of Skynyrd with that triple attack, or was it just kind of let's just jam? Does that make sense? Like, was it more
a little of both? I played the Stratocaster Ed King part on Sweet Home Alabama because I knew it, and we had limited rehearsal time. And we kind of divvied up the parts a little bit, but we didn't go too much into detail. It was a short version of Simple Man into a short version of Sweet Home Alabama, and then we kind of traded solos and stuff. And we rehearsed a handful of times, and each time it got better and better and better. And then by the time they rolled the camera, it was actually pretty cool. And for me, being on stage with Paul Rodgers was a huge thrill as well.
You're pretty well known for having a pretty famous guitar tech. He would get applause himself. We're talking about the late Brian Farmer. Did he ever tell you any cool Johnny Cash stories?
Yeah, he told me a lot of great Johnny Cash stories that I'll have to tell you in private. I'll tell you one that's not R-rated. They were playing a theater in England, and Brian and Johnny's son, John Carter, were standing behind the stage having a low-volume conversation, but apparently it was one of these old theaters where the voices carry in a bizarre way. and Johnny was on stage doing an acoustic song, and they didn't realize that he could hear them talking while he was playing. And after the song was over, he walked back around and said, am I keeping you boys from something like totally called him on it.
We talked about that Have a Cigar cover by Gov't Mule. If you go to muletracks.com, you can get that entire Pink Floyd album. All kinds of live tracks. It's really the hub for, I guess, official bootleg shows. Of course, Mule has always been real big about letting people record. So muletracks.com. We've got the new Gov't Mule album, Peace Like a River. Warren, it's a pleasure to talk to you today, man. Congratulations on the new record, and we hope to see you on the road this year.
Sounds good. My pleasure.